All right, ladies, good morning. I'm going to be letting participants in for those who show up a little later, but for now, we're going to go ahead and get started. That way we can end on time on this Saturday morning. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Sandra Thompson. I am the training collaborator with the Junior League of Orange County, California. I'm going to do a little bit of an introduction as to what the Training Collaborative is. This is something that our league started as most junior leagues do. We had an issue, we had an opportunity, and we needed to create a solution to fill the gap. We looked around 3 years ago and decided we don't have enough people to put on a full training calendar for the year. We need some help. So I reached out on Facebook to other leagues to say, hey, is anyone else having this issue? Does anyone else have a training team issue where they can't put on 8, 9, 10 trainings a year and get those done, especially during COVID? And we got an overwhelming response that yes, most of our leagues were having this issue. And so I came up with the idea of doing a training collaborative, which is all of our leagues are a part of it. Each league has a responsibility to put on one training during the year, and then you get the benefit of all the other trainings. So if you don't have a training team or your training team is strapped, you can get trainings from all over the country, from all over leagues. It expands our reach, it expands our network, it gives us opportunity to listen to new speakers and to hear topics that we might not hear otherwise. And our first year, we had 9 leagues. Last year, we had 26. And this year, we are getting ready to onboard 2 more leagues, which will put us at 86 leagues. So we are exponentially growing. And I think this is something that I hope all 290 plus junior leagues will eventually become a part of. But right now, we have a nice big group. So we've got some great trainings coming up, including the one today. So I'm really hopeful that you can join us for additional ones. Just one last thing, we have a Facebook group, the Training Collaborative of Junior Leagues. That's where all of our content gets posted, absolutely there. So if you want to join it, just request to join and I'll add you today. And I would really love to have you be a part of that group. All right, and now I'm going to turn it over to our host league today, which is the Junior League of Boise.
Okay, hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
And can you see my slides?
Yes.
Okay, great. Just wanted to check on that before we got going. So good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you are joining us from. My name is Cece Gassner. I'm a proud active member of the Junior League of Boise. I also want to welcome everybody who's joining us online. This is really exciting. I'm honored that you decided to spend some time with us today. I am going to be working with some folks here in the room with me and also keeping an eye on what's going on in the chat for any questions. But what we're going to be talking about today is how to tame your calendar. These days, there are a million things that are going to try to distract you, that are going to take up the time on your calendar, and that are going to try to play with your most valuable resource, which is your time. This came really home to me in June of 2010. I was working a full-time job, easily working 50 to 60 hours a week, plus having to attend events after hours, like chambers of commerce events, presentations, open houses. I was volunteering, of course, with my junior league, and in fact had just started my term as president of the Junior League of Boise. I was writing a weekly column with a friend of mine for what was then the largest circulation paper in Idaho, not being paid for it, mind you. My friend and I were also producing a podcast that we were sending out about every other week with the local NPR station. Again, not being paid for that. And I was volunteering on another nonprofit's board. I was coming home from the board retreat and thought something is a little off. And later on that afternoon, I was very excited to show my now husband positive pregnancy test. And I realized very quickly that something was going to have to change drastically in my life. I knew that I was going to have to get really clear and really focused because in only 9 months, there was going to be a little human that depended on me for everything and was probably going to be taking up the bulk of my time. So I actually came up with these. Is it advancing? Are the slides moving at all for y'all at home?
No, it's still on the cover screen.
Okay, let me figure out oh,
There we go.
okay. Today we are going to be covering the three clear overarching principles that I've used to tame my calendar and get more control in my life. Again, if you have any questions that come up, I've budgeted plenty of time for questions at the end, but do feel free to put those in the chat. And we're going to try to make sure we monitor that and we can get those questions answered. And if there are any questions that are asked here in the room, I will make sure to repeat that so that everybody at home and who might see the recording later will also understand what the question is. So the very first thing that I say we all need to do is to redefine what success is. We are told the lie again and again that adding one more thing, working more hours, taking on another assignment, doing all the things that come into our realm, that's going to help us get ahead. And this is what I call the hustle fallacy. You can do this in the short term, but it is not sustainable in the long term. You need sleep, rest, and rejuvenation to be able to do the things that you want, whether that's working, volunteering, leading your PTA, whatever it might be. You can only do that at a short term if you're going to be able to do your priorities at a safe and productive level. Research shows that when people who get only 4 to 6 hours of sleep each night for 14 days in a row, they start to show cognitive declines that are similar to what you'd be able to do if you stayed up for 3 days straight. Doing more often means that you are taking from somewhere else in your life, and far too often, we're taking that from our sleep, rest, and rejuvenation time. Generally speaking, we can only make so many decisions in a day before we start to get fatigued. You need to give your mind and body breaks and rest so you can keep your creative juices, good ideas, and decision-making abilities flowing. So the first thing, define your win. What are the things that are the most important things for you? How do you define the success and the win in your life? This is more of like, what is your vision for your life? How do you want to show up? How do you want to be in the world? Give you an example of this. I have two good friends. We'll call them Mary and Susan. That's not their real names, but they work at a large company here in Boise. And when they were in about their mid-30s, they were both approached by the leadership of the company at that time and they were told, we believe in you. We really want to invest in you because we see you as the future CEO and CFO of this company. So they sent them to get their executive MBA at Boise State. They invested a lot of time and training with them to really help them up their own skills. And they were thrilled. Who wouldn't want to be told, we see you as the next top leaders of your company? Fast forward a few years, I was able to watch in the media as I saw Mary definitely progressing through and going in that direction of becoming the next CEO of the company. And I happened to run into Susan at an event. I'm just catching up with her and said, so, hey, are you still with the company? And she said, oh, yeah, I definitely am. I said, well, are you still on that path to becoming the CFO? And she said, well, I had to have a really hard conversation with my boss last year. The annual evaluation, he told me, hey, you're doing great. We still see you progressing. We still want you to be the CFO. We still believe in you. And I had to look at him and say, I've had to do a lot of hard thinking. And I've realized I love this company. I'm dedicated to it. I plan to have my entire career here. I'm not looking to leave, but I don't want that for my life. I don't want to have to put in all the time that it really requires to be the CFO. I want to spend time fishing with my boys. I want to spend time camping. That is just not the brass ring that I'm trying to go for in my life. So she had to turn down what everybody else around her was telling her was success. Like, who wouldn't want to be the very top person? And especially being a woman in a career that is often defined by the male perspective. And she just had to take a step back and say, this isn't what I want. So she now is still with the company. She loves it. She's probably going to be able to retire in a few years. And she's been able to spend a lot of time fishing and camping with her boys. Once you get clear on what your win is, I want you to write it down. I want you to be super clear about exactly what that looks like for you. Create a vision board if that helps you. Find the images that really reflect what it is that you want to see as success in your life. And to be clear, these things can change over time. Don't feel like what you put down now as your win is going to be your same win in 5, 10, however many years. Again, like my friend Susan, at first she thought that that was going to be great, and she had to reevaluate things and say, actually, that's not what I want for my life. And I'll be honest, I've had to go through the same thing myself. I was in a job where I was a vice president of a university, and I had tons of people around me telling me, great, if you just, stick with this for a couple more years, you can go for presidency at a university. And at first, that sounded really exciting. That sounded really pretty awesome. I mean, having the title of president of a university, that's something you don't get every day. But I had to take a step back and say, but you know what? That's not where my passion lies right now. That's not where I really want to be, because when you're a university president, you do not control your time. You are off fundraising, you are off in meetings, you're going around talking with donors and with other leaders in the university constantly. And that's when I thought about it, I was like, I don't want that. My daughter's only 13. I still only have a few more years with her at home before she goes off to college. And that's where I want to be spending my time. So first, again, define your win. The next big principle, number 2, is what gets scheduled gets done. I don't know about you, but if I don't actually write it down, if I don't put it in my calendar, if I don't put it in my planner, and yes, I do have a written planner, it is not going to get done unless I have 50 other people suddenly texting me to say, where are you? Or are you going to get that report to me? I need to get those things written down and actually scheduled to get accomplished. Nature abhors a vacuum, as they say. And so if you don't block time off on your calendar for something, believe me, something else is going to be very glad to rush right in and take over that time for you. You want to prioritize those things that are the non-negotiables for you, the essential things that you must take care of in order to feel like you're winning in your life. And at least with that day, you're getting the important things done. I divide these all into 3 different categories: self-care, relational, and professional. And by professional, that encompasses just whatever it is that you do for the bulk of your day, whether you're being paid or not. I don't necessarily mean that's only for career women. If you're a stay-at-home mom, if you are a full-time volunteer, that's where I'd put the professional things. So for the first category was self-care. This isn't just getting your nails done or getting a massage, but those are awesome. Do make sure to schedule time for those too. But by self-care, I mean those regular activities that rejuvenate our bodies and minds for optimal performance at work and home. You have to make sure that you are sleeping enough, as I've mentioned, and I'm going to keep driving this home again and again. You have to make sure you're taking the time to properly fuel your body and not just grabbing a donut and a Diet Coke in the car all the time. You have to make sure that you are regularly moving your body. And that doesn't mean having to have 90-minute CrossFit workouts, but if you like that, cool, do it. This just means that you are making sure to take the time to get up and move during your day. You can do this in so many ways. I have a different reminders that are set on my phone that make sure to go off at about 5 minutes till the hour, just to make sure. I sometimes make sure to get up, walk away from my computer, don't look at a screen, and stretch during the day. Make sure you get up and just take a walk around the block. Maybe on your lunch hour, you decide you're not going to just sit in front of your computer and eat. You're actually going to pick yourself up, go into another room and have your lunch, and then go for a walk around the building. Whatever it might be, make sure that you actually block off these schedules of time. Countless studies can show that when you're making sure to eat right and to move and get to sleep, you are going to be far more productive, get far more done in a lot less time. For relational, this is really taking the time to figure out who are those important people in your life. How are those relationships going? What are you doing to support and nurture those relationships. And this is really whoever is the most important person to you. It can be your partner, your kids, friends, whoever it might be that you want to make sure you want to spend time with so that you're getting your cup filled up by being with them. Maybe it's important to you to have dinner with your family every night. Personally, my family has dinner every Monday night with my parents. That is important to me. For 25 years of my adult life, I lived in a different city than my parents and only saw them a couple times a year. Now that we're in the same city and they're 77 years old, I want to make sure that I am spending as much quality time with them as I can. So every Monday night, my team here in Boise knows that I love my junior league team. I will do everything I can to make them successful, but I will not be at Monday night meetings because I will be at my parents' house. Maybe what's important to you is catching up with friends regularly. I have blocked off the last Friday of every month from 8:30 to 9:30 coffee with a couple girlfriends, which is after school drop off, because we just want to connect and hang out. And we text each other all the time during the month. But for that hour, we get to really connect and really share what's going on with our kids, what's going on in our relationships, just the different things that you want to make sure your girlfriends can give you advice about and talk about, because it really just makes me feel better at the end of that hour. I also work from home. So I make sure that I schedule a lunch with a friend at least once a week. And it's not the same friend, but I spend a lot of time talking to my cats during the workday. I need to actually talk to an adult human every so often that's not just my husband. So I make sure that I call up a friend and say, hey, let's grab lunch next Wednesday, or let's meet up next Thursday, or whatever works for you. And I actually go and make sure to block that time out on my calendar because I know I'll get there to that lunch and it's going to get done. If you have a partner, maybe you want to schedule a regular date night with that person. And it doesn't have to be once a week. It's just on whatever schedule works for you. But find a time to regain that sense of fun with them, that sense of, adventure and excitement that you might have had when you started dating. Again, I don't know about you. I love my husband very much. We have been together 15 years, and sometimes it can get really easy to see that your conversations all kind of follow the same pattern and the same topics. So we try to get out to actually try new things, have a little more fun, and make sure that we're truly connecting and not just talking about what's the school lunch menu is for that week. And last category to talk about is in your professional realm. So think about, what are you really responsible for in your job? What are those key results that you are responsible for delivering? Are you blocking the time to actually achieve those, or are you being driven by yours or others' fires during the entire day? Now, your job might actually, maybe your job description actually says put out all the fires, and that's fine. I know the fires are going to come up, but for most of us, our job description has about 6 or 7 bullet points that say nothing about that. They say specific things that we are supposed to be getting done. I'd like to encourage you for the next week or two to take about 5 minutes at the end of the day to think back on the activities that you actually did that day. Actually write them down, whether, had a meeting with Bob in accounting, finished a report, looked something up for a colleague, put out that fire, whatever it was that you did in that day, write it down. And at the end of the 2 weeks, take a look back at that whole list and figure out, did I really take time to participate in the activities that were going to drive results? Did I really spend the bulk of my time making sure that I completed my job responsibilities and got the projects done that I'm supposed to be working on? And what you'll probably need to do is think about, where can I go in and make sure I am actually blocking off time where others should not be interrupting me? I know this is really difficult, especially in a day and age when we have Slack and Messenger and Teams and 50 different ways that colleagues are all trying to vie for your attention. But even just think about whether you can find a 30-minute block on your calendar that you can set aside. Even tell your boss or your colleagues, I'm going to be spending the time from 9:30 to 10 this morning working on that report you've asked me to complete by the end of the week. Most bosses will actually say, oh, thank God, she's actually going to get it done. And they will appreciate that you're taking the time to focus on the project. If your boss doesn't, you have an entirely different problem and give me a call. But they really do want you to get your work done. And we all understand that distractions are arising. Tell your colleagues that you really need to work on the certain project for the next 30 minutes, and you might not get back to them for another 45. Again, most colleagues will respect this, or shut your door so that Bob in accounting can't come in and try to interrupt you and derail your entire day. You'll probably even find that you won't need that whole block of time, because if you are truly just focusing intently on that one activity, you will probably find that you get it done in a lot less time. Last week, I actually had a couple projects that I was really trying to get wrapped up. And frankly, I was procrastinating a little bit on them because I wasn't looking forward to doing them at all. And I finally just made myself sit down and I put on a timer for an hour and said, you are going to spend the next hour working solely on this project. And within 35 minutes, I actually got it all done, which was just such a relief. But you need to block off that time and really protect your calendar to get your work done. And again, self-care, hydrate. Number 3, clearly define your goals. Your goals are those things that are going to help you get to your win, get you to your vision for your life. Goals really should be a little bit in your discomfort zone. A project is going to be in your comfort zone. A goal, well, every goal might be a project. Not every project is going to be a goal. You should be excited when you look at your goals. You should see how this is going to make a great change in your life because you're having to do something differently to make that aspirational thing happen. If it really looks to you like it's more of a checklist, then it's just a project. But I'm going to walk through Goals 101 of how to create those goals that are really going to help you get the double win of winning at work and succeeding at life. Again, these are things that really should make you excited and move you towards your vision for your life. If you are focusing on more than 10 or 12 things you call goals in a year, you're going to lose focus completely and you're going to get distracted. These are things that you want to be focused on with laser intent to make sure you accomplished, to move the needle and get you to where you want for the vision of your life. Many of you have probably heard of the SMART framework for goals, and I think that's great. I think it works especially for organizational goals, but I'd like to introduce you to the SMARTer framework from Full Focus. Full Focus is a company where I'm actually a certified pro for them. That is the planner that I use. And using this framework has been a true game changer for me, figuring out where I want to be focusing my time. So as you probably figured out, SMARTer is an acronym, just like SMART. And there are many things that they share in common, but there are a couple key differences. So first, the S stands for specific. And I encourage you to be really as specific as you can with your goals. I started out when I was writing my goals, it's thinking that I was really specific. And what I have found is that when I get down to the really tiny details of what it is that I'm trying to do, that's when I'm actually going to accomplish that goal. While it's still fairly vague, you're not really defining success of what it is you're specifically trying to do. So you want to be hyper specific about what your goal is telling you to do. Someone who barely knows you should be able to read that goal and know what you mean. Don't use like the shorthand in your own head. Don't use, the lingo that nobody else can understand. Be really specific about what you're trying to accomplish. The M stands for measurable. If you don't know what you're measuring, how will you know you actually get there, of course? Don't use words like a lot or more, saying things like run more in a week. That makes no sense, right? You might know what that kind of means to you, but if somebody else is looking at it and they wouldn't be able to understand what you're trying to say, start again. Go back to the beginning. A is for actionable. You need to understand what activity you actually are going to be doing that's going to help you achieve that goal. Make sure you use a strong verb. Instead of saying something like pay off debt, say something like eliminate or wipe out, something that's going to be a lot stronger, have a little more punch to it to really give you that emotional connection to what it is you are trying to do. Now, this next R is really where it differs from the, what is going on here? There. Differs from the SMART framework. R here stands for risky. You should actually be a little nervous about whether you can accomplish this goal. You want to be excited. Now, to be clear, you don't want this to be going into the delusional zone. If I created a goal for myself of run a marathon in less than 2 hours and 30 minutes by September 1st, 2025, that is crazy. I am not going to do that. I probably will never run it that fast. I might want to. I might look at those runners at the Olympics and say, that looks awesome, and I want to be able to do that. But guess what? This body is not going that fast in running shoes. It's just not. If I set a goal of running a marathon in less than 4 hours and 30 minutes by September 1st, 2025, that is actually doable. I've done that 20 years ago. So doing it now would be tough since I haven't really been regularly running in about a decade. But I could probably, if I focused really hard and wanted to, I don't, but I could probably make that a goal that I could achieve. So again, you don't want to be in the totally delusional zone, but you don't want to be totally in the comfort zone. If I made a goal of running a marathon in less than 6.5 hours, I could walk a marathon in less than 6.5 hours. So that is totally in the comfort zone for me. That is something I'm not going to have to actually do anything differently in my life, except maybe walk a little more to be able to achieve. So again, you want to take a look, if you want to go back to the beginning and look at your goal, if you're not feeling a little bit like, ooh, I might not quite achieve that unless I really think about it and make some changes in my life. I've already revealed that the T is time bound or time keyed, very similar to the SMART goal. You want to know two different things with this. You want to know about what's the deadline? By when are you going to achieve this goal? You also can make it more time keyed if you're using a habit goal. Say you have a goal of meditating for 5 minutes every day. I know for me, if I make a goal of saying meditate for 5 minutes every day, it's not going to happen. You want to say when. If I say meditate for 5 minutes every day at 7 a.m. in my guest bedroom from September 8th, 2024 to December 31st, 2024, that is something so specific. I can then take that and guess what? Put it on my calendar. I'm now blocking out that time. I'm now creating a reminder for myself. Yep, go back and do this. You said you're going to meditate at 7 a.m. every day. Go ahead and do that. You also, for the E, you want it to be exciting. I'm going to go through an example in a minute of a goal that I made for myself and I failed out miserably because I realized in the end, I wasn't actually excited about it. If I achieved it, I actually don't know how much it sounded great, but I don't know how much it would have made a difference in my life. You just want this to be something that is really exciting for you because if it's not exciting, it's a project. It's something on your to-do list. It's not something that you really want to be bringing into your life. And the last R stands for relevant. We all go through different seasons of life. Make sure the goals reflect the reality of your life. If I were to make a goal right now of doing an Ironman triathlon within a year, that is just not going to happen. I just don't have the 2 to 3 hours a day that I would have to set aside for training. That's not relevant for me. Likewise, if you're just starting out in your career, there might be some things that sound really great, but it's just not relevant for your life at that point. Or maybe you just adopted a child, you just adopted a puppy, something else has changed in your life. You need to make sure that whatever the goals are that you set, they might sound great on paper. You might think like, wow, those are really cool goals. But if they're not relevant for you, you really shouldn't have it there. Okay, so we're going to walk through in a couple examples here for setting goals. So this is similar to a goal I set for myself a couple of years ago. Oops. Read 50 books in 2023. Sounds great, right? Okay, I know what I'm doing. Reading 50 books in 2023. Now, looking back on this, that's pretty wide open. There are millions of books out there in the world. And I know what I mean by read. I mean get a physical printed book and read it. Other people want to listen to audiobooks. So they probably should have a different verb there of, you know, read 50 audiobooks or be really clear about it. You can make this even more specific and more achievable by saying something like read 50 books that appear on the New York Times Best Books of the 20th Century list in 2023. Now I've narrowed it down to a list of about 100 books, right? I think they had 100 on that list. You're going to read 50 of them. Okay, you at least know where to go to and what you are trying to, what you might be trying to get out of that by reading 50 of the books that people have said are the best ones you should be reading in this century. You can make it even more specific and actionable by even giving it the deadline of reading it by December 31st, 2023. The key is that your brain really hones in on deadlines. There have been so many studies that have shown that when you have a super specific deadline, you are far more likely to achieve whatever that action is meant to be. Because your brain now says, danger, there's a cliff you might fall off of if you don't get it done by that date. So this makes it an even more specific goal. And I might have had a better chance of achieving it if I had done something, if I'd written something like this. But I gotta say, I only read 27 books that year, which is still a lot more than I had read in prior years. So I still give myself a small pat on the back. But at the end of the day, I wasn't excited. I said read 50 books because I have had dozens of books sitting on my shelves for literally decades that I hadn't read. Guess what? I gave them all away finally because I realized they've been sitting on my shelf unread for a reason. I wasn't actually all that interested in reading those books after all. So I gave them to the Boise Library, and I hope they're able to be shared with the world with other people who really want to read them. But if you also are trying to make this super specific, this is what I mean by saying something is super specific that I need to do for my goals. Read the 50 books that appear on the New York Times Best Books of the 20th Century list by December 31st, 2023, by reading 50 pages every day from 8 to 9 p.m. That is how you start to set yourself up for even further success by being really specific, blocking off that time to really make this a habit that you install in your life. I'm going to go through this next example is completely made up. If there is anybody on our call today whose name is Cindy, I'm not picking on you. I just had to pick a name. So let's say Cindy makes $100,000 a year. She lives alone and she pays $2,000 every month for her mortgage. She still has $200,000 to pay off on the mortgage. If she sets a goal of paying $24,000 that year to her mortgage, that is not a goal. That is going to happen anyway if she's paying $2,000 a month, unless something really weird happens. But let's pretend nothing weird happens. So that's a project. That's an ongoing to-do item, right? And it's probably not even really an ongoing item. It's probably just pulled out of her bank account and automatically goes to the lender. So there's really nothing to do there. There's nothing to change. If she sets a goal of paying off her mortgage entirely, again, unless she's going to make some big change to her life, that is absolutely delusional. It's not going to happen because she's not even making that much money. So unless she has a plan for, I don't know, she knows she's going to get an inheritance, she's absolutely going to win the lottery, something else is going to change, she's going to take a second job, that is just in the delusional zone. But maybe she sets a goal of paying off $40,000 toward her mortgage. That possibly could be feasible as long as she knows that it changed to her lifestyle or a side hustle or something else that she is going to make in her life that is going to allow her to make the extra income to be able to pay off $40,000 instead of the typical $24,000. You also want to take a look at your goal and decide, is this a habit or an achievement goal? Are you doing it just for the end goal itself? Or are you doing it because you're trying to install a habit that will persist after the goal is actually achieved? Because this can make a difference in how you set about trying to accomplish the goal. So again, my failed goal, I have to admit to that, my failed goal was read 50 books in 2023. And part of the reason I failed, for the reasons I mentioned, I also didn't get specific on how I was going to achieve it. I just kind of put a stack of books on my nightstand and said, I'm going to start going through these and reading them. If I'd set a goal by saying, again, I'm going to read 50 pages a night from 8 to 9 p.m., I might have been more successful. I might not have enjoyed it, but I probably would have been more successful in actually reading 50 books. Or if you want it to be just the achievement goal, some goals, they really are the achievement goal. It's not going to be a habit that you need to install. You're just going to have to make sure that you are blocking off time, though, to take action towards that goal every day. So thinking of next step with your goal, and I mean literally thinking of the next steps you can take to start working toward that goal. Write down your goals in a place that is visible for you. And then write down what the first best next step could be for each of those goals. So if you have created a goal of running a 5K by December 1st, 2024, those first next steps could look like buying a new pair of running shoes, looking up a plan online of how to prepare for and train for a 5K, or researching what 5K races are in your area before December 1st. Write those things down. Block off time in your calendar when you're going to do them. Literally go into your calendar or your planner, for example, and put on your to-do list for the next day, buy a pair of running shoes at whatever your local running store might be. Make sure that you are not just leaving it up to chance, that you're actually going to take a look at this goal and the next steps. Take the time to mark off and block the time for doing those next best steps. And then start to think of what is it in the 5K race, so you have those next best steps that are blocked off, which is great. And now think, how am I actually going to get to that finish line, though, of completing the 5K by December 1st? Maybe you have to set up, after you take a look at your plan that you've downloaded from somewhere or that you've gotten from a friend, make sure you go back into your calendar, block off the time for when you're going to do each of those workouts and each of those training activities to make sure that you actually have it front of mind. Don't let it stay up to a miracle that somebody maybe taps you on the shoulder and says, okay, now it's time to go run. You have to take control of blocking that off on your calendar so that something else doesn't pop up and try to suck away that time from you. And then think about, how will you celebrate achieving that goal? This is really important. And I'll be honest, it's still something that I struggle with. I'm one of those people who's like, okay, achieve the goal next, achieve the goal next. I'm really bad at taking time to pat myself on the back and say, good job. I can do it for other people all day long, but I'm super bad at doing that myself. So I have to sit there for my own goals and really think about, why did I create this goal? What is the reason behind it? What is going to be a really satisfactory reward for myself if I achieve this goal? So in our example of running the 5K, just think about why you're doing it. Is it because you're trying to install habit of running, which will lead to better physical fitness? Maybe you're trying to get your brother to shut up because he keeps talking smack about how many races he runs and what a great runner he is. Maybe you just have seen some of your friends get really great results and you've seen them have a much happier mindset. And so you want that for yourself too. Doing this will help you think about what is a meaningful reward for yourself. Maybe it's going to be enough just to post a great selfie of yourself at the finish line with your medal and really sharing your celebration with all of your friends. Maybe you're going to have to be cutting back on desserts between now and the 5K, so you're going to celebrate afterwards with a hot fudge sundae. It doesn't have to be something huge, though it can be. It's just whatever is going to be something to remind yourself of, hey, good job. You had a goal and you achieved it. And probably one of the most important things is to keep your goals visible. How many of us work at companies where you spend a huge amount of time creating a strategic plan, which then sits on the shelf? Don't do this for yourself. Make sure those goals are front and center. I have my goals written in the beginning of my planner, and every morning I spend just a minute reviewing my goals. And once a week, for me, it's on Sunday when I'm going and looking ahead at the week ahead and what I need to get done. On Sunday, I actually take out a fresh piece of paper and I rewrite my goals. Again, that only takes me a minute or two, but it reinforces in my mind what it is that I really want to be focusing my time on and what I'm trying to achieve. I also remind myself of how much progress I've made since the last time I wrote them down and just give myself a little pat on the back for whatever it was that I was able to do. And sometimes in a week, I'll realize like, oh, maybe I only meditated 4 times this past week instead of 7. You know what? Celebrate the 4 times you did. Don't get on yourself because you weren't perfect. You're trying to make good change come into your life. It's not going to be helpful for you to get really down on yourself because you happened to mess up one day and you didn't quite follow through. If it helps you, maybe write out your goals on a big piece of paper, print them out, and keep them taped above your desk. I have a friend, she writes out her goals on a couple Post-its and just keeps them on her desk, kind of in between her keyboard and her monitor, so she can see them. But other people visiting in her office aren't necessarily seeing her goals because a lot of them are personal to her and she just doesn't want to share them, and that's quite all right. Or if you are inclined, you can go all out and post them on social media. I wouldn't do this, but a lot of people, that's the way they roll. And that is really going to help them to be accountable for achieving their goals by sharing their goals and their progress with their social media networks. So just to recap, there are a million things they're going to fight to try to distract you. Your time is super important. And a lot of times people will say you can understand the priorities of government by taking a look at their budgets. I say you can tell the priorities of a person by taking a look at their calendar. When you let other people hijack your time, which you can't get back, you're going to end up in a place that probably isn't ideal for you. When you get super clear on what is your win, what is it that will make you feel successful in life? When you take the time to block off those non-negotiables on your calendar, that you take the time for your self-care, for your relationships, and for those key deliverables that you are responsible for in your professional life. And when you get super clear on your goals and how you want to be spending your time to bring about those positive changes you're looking for, you are going to go from having a calendar that seems to rule your life to having a calendar that seems much more like a supportive friend that is pointing you in the right direction. I told you I built in a lot of time for questions. If anybody has any either in the room or in the chat, later on, you're also welcome to email me at cc@ccegassner.com with any questions or to talk about working with me on your goals further. And with that, I was asking, did anyone see a question in the chat?
I think you're looking in the chat right
Okay.
now. Looking in the chat, I joined the chat at 11:15. If there were any questions before 11:15, before it says test chat, could you please retype them?
Could you guys hear that on the recording? If you put questions into the chat before 11:15, could you retype them into the chat?
We missed it.
No.
I don't think there's been any questions.
Okay.
I have a few questions.
Okay. We have a question in the room. 1 second. Yeah.
Can they hear? So it's not about the calendar, but about the goals.
Mhm.
You did give example of how of meditating every day, and then you review your goals once a week, and you're like, oh, I did 4 days a week. That's fine. What if that happens every weekend for like 4 weeks?
Right.
So you set your
Mhm.
goal in 4 weeks. You look back and you're like, every week I only meditate 4 times a week. Is it a time to reevaluate your goal
Mhm.
and set different expectations for yourself? Or is it time to still be like, no, there was a reason why I set it up for every day and I should stick to that goal?
So the question is going back to the example of setting a goal to meditate every day but then realizing you've only meditated 4 times a week for the last few weeks, is that a time to reevaluate your goal or maybe revise it? And I would say it definitely can be. I think what you want to do is take a look at that goal and remind yourself why you made that goal. What was it that you were really looking for? So, and take a look at your patterns too. So if you meditated only 4 times in that week, in this example, but it was on the same days, maybe there's something else going on those days you didn't meditate that you want to take a look at and see if you need to make a change in your schedule. Maybe you forgot to set a reminder, maybe there's a pattern there that you can see, that you need to make a change to make sure you actually get in the 7 days of meditation. But it definitely happens that sometimes you set a goal, it sounds awesome and exciting to you, but then when you actually start getting into it and doing it, it's not producing the results you thought you were going to get. It is completely okay to go back and revise your goals. There is no goal police out there that is going to come to your door and say, wait a minute, you can't revise that goal. You need to understand, again, what is your intrinsic motivation for doing it? If it is based solely on an extrinsic motivation, then it's probably not a good goal for you. This has to be something you really want. If you're now finding out that maybe you don't really want it, I would say go ahead and eliminate it. You can change it. I would urge you not to just change it to meditate 4 days a week to make yourself feel better, that that's what you clearly can achieve. Because again, that means you're probably still operating in your comfort zone. And now it's becoming a to-do list item, kind of a go along project, right?
Mhm.
If it's something where you're like, no, I really know that meditating every day is going to bring more peace, more relevancy, whatever it might be into your life, I think that's a time to really evaluate your what you're trying to achieve. And maybe it just turns out that like 4 times a week is great for you. That's fine. But really go back at your motivation, what it is you're trying to get out of it, and see what changes you need to make to really make sure you're hitting at least 5 days a week, 6, you're getting closer to that goal. Does that help?
Yep.
Okay, great.
Cece,
Yes.
Don Peters, I'll read these off and let you tackle each one. So Don Peters says she feels like she struggles to make the digital platform work because out of sight, out of mind, but similarly, it's hard to commit consistently to an analog platform. Any ideas for that aspect of marrying the goals and a calendar to become more aligned to it?
That can be really hard. So I completely empathize with you, Dawn. I actually have a written planner and I do keep a digital to-do list in addition to, the calendar on my phone, and the calendar that I keep in Google with my husband. I would say it's a matter of, for me, it's been a matter of just being consistent of going back and using both those tools. I learned that using a digital task list or a digital calendar only was only so helpful for a variety of reasons. One being that my phone seems to love dropping appointments with no regularity. So I can't even tell which one it's dropped until I get a text from a friend that says, hey, are you coming to coffee? So having the written planner for me has been much more helpful in actually making sure I make all of my appointments and get everything done. It might be that the planners you found aren't right for you. I've had to do some experimenting myself and figure out what is it that I'm really looking for in a planner. Or maybe it's just something as simple as getting, some of those big post-it calendars that you can put on your desk and at least making sure to write down your non-negotiables in that way. If you want to email me offline, and I'd be happy to talk with you about what's going on with you more, and maybe we can see if we can find a system that might be more effective for you.
Okay, and Brandy Nichols asks, how do you deal with competing priorities with your time when both things may be goals you're working for? For instance, you might have something scheduled that you want to work on or attend on an evening, but you're also told by the organization that you want to support that something they need help with at the same time. How do you decide which goal or priority should take precedence?
That's really hard. And I think the answer is you have to be you're probably the best person to answer which one is going to take the priority. Sometimes for me, there are times when I easily could get myself double or triple booked by different events that are overlapping or exactly the same time. And there have been plenty of times when I have just had to say to one or the other, I'm sorry, I am overcommitted, and you don't have to tell them the other event you're going to or what you're doing. I think that's life. I think there's just too many things going on at any given time. And you have to start just getting clear on what are the different things you could be doing and just make that decision. So I'll give you a quick example. At one point, I was at an event and I had a friend who said, "Oh my gosh, I see you everywhere. You go to everything." And I told her, actually, and no, I don't. At the beginning of the month, I take a look at all the different events I could go to, and I choose 4. And I choose them by how much I really want to actually even participate in that event. I choose it by whether I will probably see a lot of people at that event. And I choose it by how it also fits in with my family life. So if the 2 things that are competing are work things, I think that's a time to bring in your boss or a colleague and say, which of these things is actually going to do more to drive the work of the organization forward? If you're talking about something that's competing like a junior league event and maybe you're a big supporter of the Humane Society in your community and they happen to be going at the same time, you'll probably need to find some trade-off schedule that you can take. Maybe this month you do the junior league activity. Maybe next time something arises, you go to the Humane Society activity. It can be really hard, and those choices can be really difficult to make, but you can't be in 2 places at once as much as we might all want Hermione Granger's time turner. So you really just have to be clear on which one at that moment is more of a priority for you and is going to, for lack of a better term, bring you more joy. What's going to fill up your cup more by being there?
Cece, that's such a good point. I had, you might know Julie Elgner out at UCLA, who said, what gives you energy?
Mhm, mhm.
That's the thing she always drives to. Pick the thing that's going to give you that good energy.
Right. And that might even give you some further insights. If you find that you're, again, consistently choosing the junior league event over the Humane Society event, for example, it doesn't mean you hate the Humane Society, right? It might just be that in this season of life, junior league is giving you way more than the other organization. And maybe that you just have to it helps you to make some other choices and decisions in your life for how you're going to spend time and money and treasure.
All right. And Megan Stater asked, I struggle with completing the tasks I actually set out to do. What suggestions do you have to help with that? I tend to snooze the reminder because I'm busy with something else at that moment.
Okay. There are well, not a lot. I'd say a few key things you can do. One, some people they just feel they do better at switching around between tasks. I'd like to argue that you'll end up getting less done if you keep doing that. So the more that you can really try to block off time to focus on one thing, and it can be a muscle you have to build up to really make yourself not be distracted by other things that are popping up and really only work on that one item. But I would just, be a little hard on yourself in that moment and just say, for the next 30 minutes, all I'm going to do is work on this. And I know that other things are going to pop up and I'm just going to have to ignore them. You can turn off Teams, you can turn off your email. I have a friend who she actually has to remove the mail app from her phone at times because she just gets
I've done that on vacation.
she just gets way too distracted. She, by the pings and the notifications and things that come up. You might have to just power down your phone for the next 30 minutes so you're not getting the buzzes coming in all the time. Does that help answer your question?
Can I add to that?
Yes, sorry, we have a commentary in the room.
Because I have struggled with this too. One thing that helped a lot like you said, push yourself hard to like build up that muscle,
Mhm.
and then every time you succeed, celebrate a little bit.
Yep.
Just like add a little celebration to every time when you start building up that muscle.
So the suggestion in the room was building up that muscle to really focus on one thing at a time can be hard to build up. So when you're successful at doing that and spending that whole, whatever it is, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, give yourself a little celebration, give yourself a little attagirl for actually getting that done, so that you might get that little dopamine hit of like, I did it. You know, if that's something that can become a real problem for you, figure out what could be the reward. Maybe that's when you get up and go get yourself your coffee, or you do something that you almost have to be like, training yourself, like you might train a puppy. Like, you're going to give them a reward, but they have to get the activity done first before they can get that reward.
I would add, there's been research out of the University of Utah that only 2.5% of the general population is what they call a super tasker. People
Yeah.
who are able to do that multitasking that we all try to do. And in general, like even most of us are really quite bad
Right.
at, listening to a podcast and typing an email or something.
Right. So
That's
it's
not
it's
work.
brought up that for those who weren't able to hear, at the University of Utah, that there actually has been studies done that only about 2.5% of people are actually really good at task switching. And it's true that usually, like if you are working on a report and you see an email come in and you switch over to your email and read that email, it usually takes people anywhere from like 20 seconds to sometimes up to 9 or 10 minutes to actually go their attention back to fully focusing on that first task. So the more you can try to keep yourself just doing monotasking, focusing on one thing at a time, you again tend to take less time to have to get it done, and you'll do it better than if you're switching around. I can't be the only person who, if I'm typing something and I'm listening to like a podcast or something that's playing, I start typing out what they're saying and not actually, or at least like switch words and instead of what I'm trying to type in for my report or whatever I'm doing. So encourage you strongly, the more you can sort of monotask and turn off the notifications so you can concentrate, the better.
I think it also helps you set like downstream boundaries with other people. So
Mhm.
it's like it reinforces your own importance of like what the work that you're doing to other people.
Mhm.
And it can have that like lateral effect. Like, oh, hey, this person's busy for 30 minutes. What can I do for 30 minutes?
Right. So it's pointed out that it can have really good downstream effects with your colleagues if they can see that, oh, wow, this person is turning off notifications and focusing on something for the next 30 minutes. What could I be doing? What should I be focusing on myself for the next 30 minutes if I can't interrupt her and try to get something from her?
Or the panic of, oh my gosh, this person's not available. Why are they not available?
Right.
And it just like, that triggers that own self-reflection of, oh, maybe I don't have to panic. Maybe I don't have to fight the fires that I think I'm fighting.
Right. And pointed out, if you couldn't hear, that sometimes your colleagues might get a little bit of panic of like, why can't I get this person? Why isn't she reachable? But then they suddenly realize like, oh, I'm not actually on fire. I don't actually need to talk to her right now. I can calm myself down and get something else done until she's available. I don't know. I see things popping up. I can't seem to read the chat though. If you have a question, I think you also should be able to unmute yourself. We'll just have to be patient with each other, because you know what? Actually, why don't I'm gonna stop sharing. Oh, now I can see everybody. Okay. If you do have a question, why don't you go ahead and do this. Now I can see all your loveliness. Okay, if you have a question, apologies, if you put it in the chat, you can go ahead too and raise your hand and I will try to call on you. I know we're at the top of the hour, so I want to be mindful of everybody's time. Oh, wait, at Haley? Thought I saw somebody with a raised hand. Okay.
There was one question or more of a comment that from Brandy says, sometimes it feels adding personal and self-care items to my calendar makes me feel overwhelmed.
Mm.
When my calendar is always so full with work and the league, so time to myself takes a backseat.
I think that's fairly common. I would say especially with women, but not exclusively with women. That is something too that sometimes can take time to build up that muscle and get used to. You have to start just allowing yourself to actually take that time to block off. You don't owe anybody else an explanation for why you are blocking off some time. If you have someone, a leader in your league who is demanding more and more, it is okay for you to tell them, I would love to help, but right now, I just can't make that a priority. I need to go take care of myself for a time. You don't need to give them a huge long explanation of what's going on. And frankly, if that's happening to everybody in your league, another topic for another time, but your league probably needs to reprioritize and reconsider all of the different million things it's doing if it's really eating into everybody's personal time. But start slow. Block off 10 minutes for you to just to allow yourself to not answer somebody else's phone call, to take a walk, to go have a snack, whatever it is. Yeah. Seriously, with lunch, really make yourself get up from your computer, stop reading what everybody else is trying to demand of you, and go sit somewhere else quietly with a magazine that you've been trying to go through just for 30 minutes. After a while, you will feel less and less guilty about doing this when you realize how much more peace it's actually bringing into your life. So I hope that helps. Feel free to reach out to me if you want to talk about that more. Let's see.
Brenda
Great.
says thank you.
Okay,
And I didn't see any more questions.
great. And Thelma, I love your comment. My team at work does this. We'll let folks know we're turning off notifications and going heads down to power through some focused work. I think that's great. And I've seen some companies really move to things like that, where they even might have meeting-free Wednesdays or
Mondays, Fridays.
right. They'll just say, or they say all meetings will be on this certain day, and people just know that maybe on Tuesdays, they're probably going to have a whole day of back-to-back meetings, but for the rest of the week, they shouldn't have everything. They shouldn't have their calendar suddenly getting filled up with tons of at least internal work meetings. I know one company that they've even been very successful in saying that their official work hours are from 9 to 3, because by putting that constraint on their time, they actually found people are getting to be much more focused during those working hours than when, I think we've all seen it like 8 to 5. You see your friends, they get up, they, stroll around with their coffee, they take the breaks. When I worked in New York, I don't even know how much time my colleagues would spend going down 33 floors to go outside and smoke. I mean, it's just like we find ways when there's too much time to kind of fill it with things that aren't very productive. Let's see. Ashley said, do you suggest trying to figure out your most productive time of day and then perhaps strategize based on that? I definitely do that. I'm a morning person. I come up with my best ideas in the morning. And so I tend to try to put meetings which are going to be more of sharing information or getting information. Tend to put those in the afternoon as much as I can, so I can really block off my mornings to work on some of my other tasks that might need a little more critical thinking or creativity. So I think it's definitely something to figure out. If you're going to be tired, if you just know you crash at 2 p.m., don't make sure you're not scheduling that time for something where you really have to be putting your best thinking to something, for example. Okay. Well, thank you very much. And I guess, Sandra, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you, everybody. You're going to receive an email after this with a very brief survey, a copy of the recording, and another invitation to join the Facebook group. Again, you'll probably receive it in the next half an hour, but I really want to thank Cece Gassner and the Junior League of Boise for putting this on today. This has been really, really helpful, and hopefully you got some good nuggets out of it on your Saturday. So thank you very much. Have a good weekend, and enjoy, and get ready for next week, you guys. Have a productive week.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.